Network of awareness makes your brain coherent. One of the fastest growing podcasts. You can hear it 24/7. You got listeners out in London, informationalists in Paris. The echo spreading out, no parrot. Just dissect, digest, and share it. The righteous rhymes hit the spirit. Click 90 times, it won't perish. Cause y'all's the mind ain't no fairy tale like the belly our parents. It's time to rise, don't get worried. United minds, it's apparent. Download every single errand, but most ain't fit to catch it, even if they were Larry. Interviews, the interludes, they enter you, taking you on a journey like no other. It places you in a state of awareness. It's your fault if you hate the truth, cause y'all will be always on this way, my brother. Better change your views. All praise, yeah.
We live in a world ruled by tyranny, where knowledge is suppressed and ignorance is glorified. A world where propaganda and misinformation travel the airways at the speed of lies. But in the midst of the violence and chaos, a great awakening is taking place. And as the media empires continue to collapse, a new network is forming. A network of truth, a network of courage, a network of awareness. Peace and greetings. You are now tuned into the Network of Awareness podcast radio station, where we examine current events, politics, health, finance, and topics of cultural relevance in America and throughout the world, while bringing you insightful interviews with guests that will both educate and inspire you. And now, your host of the Network of Awareness podcast radio station, ORRA the Informationalist.
Please just tell me what's happening to me in plain English without the mumbo jumbo.
My aura is a network full of awareness and gifts like Aura, the informationalist.
How you doing?
Hey, peace and greetings, brothers and sisters. Welcome to a live broadcast of the Network of Awareness. And I'm your host, founder of the Network of Awareness, or the Informationalist. Let's get some music up in here. Let's go. So, brothers and sisters, today we got another bonus episode before we reach season 6, right? And for those that don't know, season 6 is it's going to be about the light is within you and all around you. But before we do that, we're going to be doing these bonus episodes. And as you know, I always have guests on the show. And today is another installment of the Truth Seeker series. And it's called Benevolent Biohacking. And I'm going to have a show today where I did an interview in the past with a brother by the name of Tim Bowie, that's originally from Sacramento, California. And this brother is a flow state coach. And as many of you know, I have a lot of different life coaches that specialize in different fields of the whole entire life personal development coaching industry. And it's very important that we get these different perspectives of people that help others to make incremental improvements in their life. And that's what biohacking is. Biohacking is making incremental improvements in your life, biologically, mentally, and many other things. And in this episode, I'm going to have a very in-depth discussion about the work that Tim Bowie does. He's also a mixed martial artist, and it's a very good one. He's got some great videos of stuff that he does on Instagram, which his Instagram link is in the description box. And just to give you a little insight as to what he does, it's very simple. A flow state coach focused on helping purpose-driven high performers excel. He uses evidence-backed methodologies to facilitate the alignment to client vision and goals to make them easily attainable, and eliminating burnout and procrastination and imbalance. So the brother does some great work. And I'm going to, like I said, have an in-depth discussion with him about all this stuff. And that's why I decided to call this episode Benevolent Biohacking, which I had another name for it originally. But I thought this was more fitting after having a discussion with Tim. So with that being said, before I actually bring him on the show, just an update. We're going to have the TV channel coming out soon. I'm going to make sure I do it right. I have a lot of other things that I'm going to be doing as far as work that's going to keep me really busy. But it's not going to stop the growth of the show, even though I have taken somewhat of a break from doing shows 5 days a week. Like I had mentioned when I ended season 5, that this is exactly what it's going to be like. So for people that have been expecting shows every day, that hasn't been the case. But like I've recommended, I'm going to recommend it one more time and continue to do so before we start season 6. This is the perfect opportunity for those that haven't listened to past episodes to start scrolling through the seasons. There's 5 seasons now. There's over 520 episodes that you can listen to on this podcast network, whether you listen through Apple, Spotify, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Podcast Addict, Pandora, you name it, I'm on it. As well as, YouTube, Facebook. But these YouTube and Facebook channels, they don't have all the episodes, right? Because I've only been doing video podcasting for a short period of time. It's something that I just got into. My podcast has been audio since June of 2020. And if you want to listen to past episodes, I strongly urge that you do that, because there's a lot of information that I brought out and a lot of good stuff that you can listen to that ranges anywhere from a half an hour to 3 hours of listening per episode. And I would strongly suggest that you brothers and sisters do that, because there's a lot of great stuff that I have from the past that not really understanding how the algorithms work with these companies that shadow ban and all that. So when I first came out, I was guns a-blazing, really bringing out a lot of information, especially when it came to the science appliance and the whole, pandemic thing and things that I was bringing out before things really got bad, and it all played itself out. It was kind of like being a prophet without trying to be a prophet, but it was clear to see the direction that we were going in. And ever since the pandemic has come, nothing's been the same ever since. And I'm starting to understand that more and more as I start to acclimate myself back into the world, because I kind of went off the grid for quite some time. And my only sanctuary was my home and my studio. And I wasn't really out there in the world. It was very limited. But now I'm slowly but surely going out more into the world and socializing and, interacting with people to be the Most High's example, and to spread knowledge, wisdom, and understanding the best way that I've been gifted and blessed and graced to do so. So with that being said, this is a very in-depth interview that I did with Tim Bowie, and I hope that it brings you great substance. And I'm going to share that in just a moment, and then I'll be back. Oh, there it goes. Let me bring that back here. So I'm going to play this interview. It's about an hour and 16 minutes long. So like I mentioned before, I hope it brings you great substance. And why don't we play that video right now? And then I will be back to end the broadcast. So thank you for tuning in to the live broadcast of the Network of Awareness, as well as don't forget to download the show and support the show with your downloads, because that's how we get to monetize the show with the ads that are in the show if they're downloaded. Okay, it definitely helps out. So let's get on with this benevolent biohacking with Tim Bowie. All right, so enjoy, brothers and sisters, and I'll be right back. Hey, welcome to the show, Tim. Glad to have you on board on the Network of Awareness. And how you doing today?
Thank you for having me, Aura, and I'm doing amazing. Thanks for asking. How are you?
I'm doing well, brother. And you know, you have a very interesting coaching practice and business. Um, you also have what I consider, in my own opinion, to be a very pretty impressive martial arts style. Like you seem to you put it like this, like in my opinion, you seem like you could whip some major ass if need be, based on your techniques and things you know how to do. So let's talk all about that. So what how the way I like to start things off is go to the nucleus of where it all started. So if you could let the listeners know a little bit about just, briefly about your childhood and some of the aspirations you had as a kid that led you into the work that you do these days.
Sure, sure. My parents were immigrants growing up, so my childhood was crazy. I think they just had this uh, sort of work hard mentality and not really a big emphasis on like emotional connection or yeah, no emotional connection at all, really. So it's like, uh, there's no hugs, there's no nothing, no, like you're just there, but you're supposed to like be, cleaning the house or doing your homework, and that's it. So I think that led to a pretty depressed childhood. I think I was, disconnected at home, and then I was disconnected at school. Um, I didn't really quite feel like, an American, although I was born here, growing up. And I always felt like an outsider, especially growing up in a school that there's like only like a couple of other Asian kids or just, people of ethnicity really. So I thought I just felt like alienated, kind of growing up. And I think that caused me to act out a lot growing up. Then, um,
When you say
uh,
act out,
mhm.
um, through violently or
Yeah,
getting
I
a
would
lot of
like get.
trouble and mischief?
We got into some fights on the bus. I had to take the school bus, or we took the school bus, and so sometimes I get kids would try to pick on me or something. I get a fight, or I get suspended from the bus or from school. I was in the principal's office all the time. Middle school, I got expelled. So we had my parents had to try to figure out like what to do with me because I was just always up to no good, I guess.
What state and city did you grow up in?
I grew up in Sacramento, California. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you grew up in that West Coast environment.
Yeah, Tupac was my
Um,
role model. That's what I say, man.
Tupac,
Uh,
yeah.
so I mean, growing up, that was the script, like try to, Godfather, Tupac. That was like, so that's pretty much who I aspired to become. That's who I became. It's after leaving my parents' house at 18, I like started selling guns and drugs and just moving into that life where people really respected. I really crave respect. People really respected me for like what I did, what I was able to bring, the value. It was a lot of ego though. I mean, I was just like, yeah, I'm like super cool, you guys. And everyone's like, yeah, you're cool. I'm like, all right, good. You guys are cool too. So just like a bunch of that stuff. So, um, but that was my first time realizing that I could become more than what I was. I think that was a really big thing. Is like becoming my aspirations, like being the badass that I always imagined that I could be, like the G. Um, and that people really respecting me, people owing me favors, like people coming to me for things. I just thought that was really cool. And then like around like 25, 26, that's when I really ran into like, I think, deeper questions. I think I was still depressed all the way up until 25. So like a really long time, like 20 years pretty much. I was just very depressed. Just not a lot of connection to myself emotionally or with my parents. I always fought with my parents a lot. So I think that was like pretty rough. Not having like my parents that I could count on until I went and I had a breakup. And then that's what made me like look more deeply into myself. And I was on Tumblr at the time, and that's where I encountered a bunch of like spirituality stuff, quote unquote, some of the new age stuff that I ran into that just kind of invited me to explore different narratives and look at myself in the lens of um, like love and how much I love myself and the way that I was treating myself and treating other people. And I just saw that like, I'm treating people like pretty shitty. So I probably don't have a lot of love within myself either. And I think that was a really big reality check. Um, yeah, things started coming together for me at that point. I think like that and like a bunch of other like out of body experiences I had throughout my childhood all the way up until that point. Things just started like, oh, like there's way more to life than getting respect and being cool and having people owe you favors. So
Yeah.
I think that's what started. That's when things started blossoming for me, I think.
Well, you and I have somewhat similar experiences. I didn't have parents. I had a parent, but I did have a stepfather, and my Tupac, or I didn't grow up really Tupac because we're kind of almost the same age, but I grew up with that whole Scarface mentality,
Yeah.
and I grew up with the mentality that I wasn't going to live past the age of 21. So
Yes.
by
Same.
the time I was 15, I was already selling heroin.
Yeah.
Now, this is the question I have for you, because when I was 15, I got set up to get killed by one of
Mm.
my best friends. Really changed my life significantly. That change that happened to me at 15 still is present to this day. Was there any moments in those times of when you was a teenager up until 25, going through your state of devaluing yourself, looking at the world in a way where it's very egotistical? There's this self-righteous indignation there. You can't do anything wrong. You're not even really conscious of what you're doing. You're just doing it. You're feeling you're
Yeah.
anything struggling of it, all right, brothers. Looks like we're having some tea, so give me the most uh all right. So is of true value spiritually. Were there any situations that happened where you had a spiritual or had an out of experience where you was like, whoa, like there's something more to what I'm actually experiencing and I better change? Did you have any moment?
Yeah, I really love how you just like encapsulated that self-righteous indignation, that whole period of our lives. I think you did that really well. I was pretty arrogant, my dad. But yeah, I think my first experience was when I was 12, and I Googled how to meditate. And after like I think my first time or my third time, somewhere around like the really really beginning, it was just I looked up how to meditate, and something came up on Google. It was like Zazen meditation, which is like a Zen style. I came to find out later, and it's basically like you count your breaths. So every inhale and exhale, you count. So inhale 1, exhale 2, up to 10, and then you just go back to 0. So I did that for a while. And then like I just had this experience where as I was inhaling I felt like the same amount of air that was coming in, I was exhaling. And then like the cycle continued till I felt like I stopped breathing, where like they were just like equal, like just in and out, in and out. But like it was just almost the point where I wasn't breathing. And then like as that started to like that cycle of breathing, that rhythm started to slow down, time started to slow down. And then like, I had my eyes closed and then I just like entered this, what I would call like a subliminal space where like all of a sudden I was connected to like source pretty much. Like every question I had was immediately answered. And like I just had this massive download of like all these things that I've ever wondered.
Um, I think you froze up for a
Okay.
second there. Okay,
Oh,
you're back. All right.
were you able to hear me?
No, you
Oh
kind of froze up
no.
for a second. You had one of
I don't
those
know what's going on.
intermittent pauses. That's okay. You could just start off where you left off.
Yeah, so time really started slowing down and all of a sudden I had this huge download from source and it was crazy because I didn't have the language to describe it and I didn't know what to expect. I didn't even know that, that was even possible. Like it was just a completely different experience. And it was day when I entered meditation, but when I left, it was night. And and it felt like 15 minutes, but it was like a couple hours. And it was weird. Like I just got teleported into the space and I was like super traumatized by it. Like it sounds really cool and it was really cool, but like as a teen, like you really don't know how to describe an experience. Like you could have got abducted by aliens. Like how do you explain that? You just can't. You don't have the words for it, And like I didn't have my parents to rely on to like something really weird happened today. Mom and dad, no, they didn't give a shit about that kind of stuff. So there's so I couldn't talk to my friends about it. So I think that was the beginning of a series of out of body experiences that I've had, and I think out of body experiences are also like categorized as near death experiences too. That the similar thing happens where your pineal gland is triggered and DMT comes out, and you have like visions and things like that, or you enter subliminal spaces and contact with source. So yeah, it's been a lot of natural out of body experiences as well as like DMT, ayahuasca, things like that. But I think like seeing that there was like a depth to life that I hadn't touched yet each time, and then going back to the normal space, connecting with like people at school and stuff, and they're just arguing about like just mundane things like, oh, he didn't raise their hand, or like he stole this, or whatever, and it's like, you guys have no idea like what's happening, like, but nobody could understand. So I think as I got older and like realized like that there's like this huge body of like spirituality or new age or whatever that has the language for it, then I was able to share with people, and they're like, oh yeah, like I've had similar experiences too, and then we can really finally connect, and so like just close that loop finally, and just meet the right people that have always been kind of seeking and like been part of these like more deeper life experiences and like really want to understand what's going on.
So you tried a lot of things. So from everything you've done and the understanding that you gain and the what I call the inner standings
Mm.
of who you are as a spiritual being, having a physical experience,
Mm.
what does spirituality mean to you now?
Yeah, I think the first level of spirituality is just it's on a spectrum, and it's just I look at it from the spectrum of love, and I think there's like patterns of self-sabotage on one level or one end of the spectrum, and the other end is self-love. So like everything that you're doing that you're holding yourself small, or you're doing just conditioning critical thoughts downloaded from your parents or um, from other people that basically keep you from operating at the level that you can, like where that doubt comes from, where the limitations come from, all that stuff. Like when I remember when I was like young, even brushing my teeth was a challenge. I would I'd literally fake brushing my teeth just so my parents would like not get on my case. But it took as much. I had to like wet my toothbrush, like I had to put it back, and like squeeze my toothpaste. And I was like, at this point, like after a few times of doing that, I was like, I might as well just brush my teeth. And then like that's a cycle of like self-love. It's like, oh, just take care of yourself, dude. Like, what are you doing? And that's really
My
what it
daughter
is.
did
Just
the
like,
same thing. My daughter did the same thing for years.
it's in your DNA.
Well, no, not I don't do it, but I don't have any cavities.
You're mischievous though, right? Or
But
she like
yeah,
doesn't
but
follow the rules or something.
but she has like 7 cavities now. She's only
Oh no.
21 years old, and it
Okay.
sucks. But yeah, she used to do the same thing.
It's a thing, I guess. But yeah, so
Yeah.
like just I think we only have like maybe like a limited amount of things that we do every day, and so it's just really crowding out the things that don't serve us for the things that do, and I think that's considered self love. And I think when you have enough of a like a demonstration of that to yourself, like yo, you take care of yourself, like that's cool. You develop that rapport with yourself, then I think go into this process of becoming more full within yourself of love, and you become like a beacon of whatever that is, and it comes out in the form of kindness, whatever that is, and people see that, people recognize that, and that opens portals, and people just open like their heart, they just like share things with you, they're vulnerable, they're comfortable feeling vulnerable with you, because like somewhere inside it looks like you're somebody that they can trust, because there's no critical negativity within you that's looking at them, they don't feel judged. And so I think that's really like the opening volley of spirituality.
You're probably the type of man like me where do you have people like spewing their guts out to you the first time they meet you, telling you some of their deepest, darkest secrets? Because I've had that happen to me so much where people tell me some of the I think it's crazy, but I've gotten to understand it now where it's just the energy that you emanate through your aura where
Mm,
people feel a level of peace. Because I've had people tell me stuff like when it comes to trauma, especially
mm.
sexual trauma that they experience as children.
Same.
And they just tell me it done the first time they're meeting me. I've had women tell me
Yeah,
that, like, yeah,
yeah,
my stepdad, raped me. And I'm like,
yeah.
I'm like, sorry
Is
to
there a
hear
sign
that.
on
And
my
it's just
forehead
like,
that says that you should tell me
yeah.
this?
But there's a certain level of empathy that this is what the understanding I came to is that
Mm,
I'm an empath, and I didn't
mm.
think I was for a long
Same,
time.
same.
I thought that I was a rigid individual, which to a certain degree I am because I am very reserved. But there is something in my spirit that was welcoming these people that once they started talking to me, they felt this level of comfort and safety
Mm,
that by telling me this, that it wasn't a bad thing, even though what they
yeah,
were telling me was something horrific
that is
that I wouldn't
powerful.
wish upon my enemies. So,
Mm.
have you had that happen to you?
Yeah, like I think growing up, with like you say, Scarface and Tupac and stuff like that as my role models, like there was a lot of emotional repression, and I didn't really value that empathetic, sensitive side of myself. Like I just try to shove it down somewhere. And actually, it was a gift, because
Right.
I didn't realize that throughout my life, so many women had come out to me, like just telling me about similar things. Like they had you know, some experiences of sexual assault or some things like that. And then as I got older and really discovered like the space of safety within myself and like grounded within my masculinity, men started coming to me like just first time meeting and stuff like that, like just sharing their experiences of what happened when they were a boy and stuff. And I think
Mhm.
that's where some of the work goes to for me is like people, like for whatever reason are attracted.
We just had an intermittent pause. Uh, Maybe you'll come
Yeah,
back.
I gotta fix my internet now. What's going on with this?
That's
That's
okay. You're back. Okay. But yeah, we left off where you were saying that, like you even had men come to you and share these things that they wouldn't probably normally share with other people, and they've shared it with you. And um that is a gift. That is a
hmm
gift that comes
hmm
from that higher power that you not a lot of people have that. What is considered in the scriptures of the fruits of the spirit, where people feel especially if it's a woman, right? Like they're not going to share that with just any man, because they're much when people go through that, whether male or female, they're very guarded. but it takes a certain level of trust
Mm,
to be able to express that to another person. So there's something that that level of compassion and empathy that a person emanates, that energetic frequency that is emanating from that auric field compels them to feel it. They may not be able to interpret it or understand it for what it
mm,
is, but
mm,
spiritually they are going to vibrate on that level, and that's why
mm,
they disseminate or convey or express that feeling to you so easily.
mhm,
And then it's our job to kind of process it and utilize the proper understanding and discernment on how to deal with that, so that we
yes.
can not close ourselves off and be like, hey, why are you telling me that? Don't tell me that stuff. I don't want to hear that stuff. But
Mm,
instead be able to put ourselves in their shoes, understand what they're feeling, and then provide some insight or guidance on helping them to understand that it's not their fault. And that's what I've
mm,
been able to do. Be like, hey, that's not your fault. Don't feel the shame that comes with that anymore. And if there's anything I can tell you, is this, and that to help you move forward. And a lot of times it goes very well.
mm,
Not that it ever goes bad, but sometimes it's hard for people to embrace what you're telling them. There
mm,
are other people that would be like, hey, I'm so happy that I had this conversation. So I haven't told that to anybody. Only my mother
mm,
knows, or only this person knows. And now I told you. And that's when I tell them the famous line that Robert Riopel, who was my very first guest a couple of years
mm,
ago, where he said, everything happens for a reason. Or do you know what the other half is? And I was like, no. Well, that reason is there to serve you. So every time you're having these encounters with people, nothing is coincidence. Like in the movie V for Vendetta, the only thing that when it comes to coincidence is the illusion of it. It's not
mm,
real. It's everything serves its purpose. Everything is very precise and intricate from moment to moment because everything is always in the present. There is no past or future. That's only our perception of the reality. But when it comes to the universe, it just is. It's the constant, it is always happening at the very moment. So that's something that I've come to the understanding of, and it's helped me out a lot. And I'm growing in that understanding. You know, it's never ending. Um,
it's
let's
truth,
talk
man.
about this. Let's talk about discernment, because that when you told me about your discernment coaching, I thought that was amazing.
Mm,
How did you, first of all, what is your understanding of discernment, and how did you develop this coaching style that has discernment as the foundation of it?
mm. So I think it comes from understanding first principles, right? And understanding first principles is this idea that comes from physics, which is like, what is like if you have you're presented with a complicated problem, like how do you break it down to the most simple aspects so that you can actually manage like getting into like this really complicated problem? And so there are, I think, elements within every situation, circumstance, problem, and it usually boils down to very similar things. And also, if you look at like there are like supposedly maybe seven natural laws of the universe. It was written a long time ago by some guy named Hermesius Trismegistus or something. I don't know his name. Thoth, Emerald Tablet of Thoth. And it's also talked about in the Illuminati or the Freemasons, seven natural laws. So like like those are a set of principles, and so there are many sets of principles that could be useful, like just different framework. And I think for me, looking at like going through, I love frameworks, I love archetypes, I love like templates, and just going through life, I was like, I studied so many different things like the Enneagram, MBTI, like just endless amounts of just different ways of categorizing ideas. And I was like, whoa, like all this comes down to like, how do I like filter out like all these really complicated things into things that I can make a decision from? And then at the end of the day, it comes down to the compound effect. Like everything, you don't, I mean, like there is such thing as instant gratification and you can get results right away, but it's all about the long game. Like everything compounds over time. And that's a quote. I don't know, Einstein and a bunch of other people have said it, but it's just like that's the most powerful force in the universe, is just compounding over time, like, and it comes as a massive snowball. Um, and so the base of that of what can compound is your judgment or your decision making or discernment. It's like the layer of discernment that you operate from creates the snowball effect. Each time you make a decision, that just stacks on another decision. And then that just creates like the flow of your life. And all of your decisions, like all the decisions you make to like make friends with certain types of people, say boundaries, and say no to certain types of people, like invite certain things into your life. Like it may come to you like 5 years later or 3 months later, but it's all coming back to you, like the good things and the bad things. And it all comes from just like a level of discernment that we have, that we operate from. And I look at that as like, if I was, to have a child and raise him, like I would just think of like, what, like, I don't need him to think the way I think. I would just want him to think in a way that he can discern for himself what's good for him. And I was like, okay, so if that's the case, then what is the way that I would share with him? And it's like this basic human operating system of just discernment. It's like, just figure out, like, how do you figure out what's the best thing for you based on what's showing up in your life, and taking action on that, because that's all it comes down to.
Yeah. If you ever have children, do you have children?
I do have a son, not really in his life right now. And yeah, that's it. I have a son.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a daughter, but I didn't really get to raise my daughter. I was more of a weekend dad through court systems and everything. But if you do get to spend time with your son, teaching him that is going to help him in these days and times, especially in a society that is teaching the kids about self-worship and straying them away from understanding themselves and becoming more automatons to serve the system. But let's talk about something that you have in your biography, and I want the listeners to get an understanding of how you go about doing this. You go off of principles and methodologies. You've studied a lot of Eastern civilization ways of doing things, especially when it comes to meditation, breath work, discipline, and stuff like that. So it says you help people achieve their goals. That's in your coaching business. You facilitate, it says methodologies to facilitate alignment to client vision and goals to make them easily attainable. So whatever people want to attain to be, you help them do it by eliminating the burnout process that they go through, procrastination, which is huge, and also imbalance. So what is the ways, briefly, that you can explain without having to, go through the whole process of your coaching? Because I want the listeners to if they want to know more, they have to go through you to get that coaching. But
Sure.
what are some of the ways that you teach people how to not get burnout, how to not procrastinate, and how to not be in balance with their life?
I love this question because I feel like I could talk about it forever. And also I don't hold back. So like, if you can ask me anything, I'll tell and share everything. Like there are no secrets for me. Yeah, I think it goes down to discernment again, and discernment allows us to constantly filter out the right thing. And where that comes from is having a vision. And so this is something that is probably the most valuable thing that I can share with like the listeners and you, is like, in every area of our life, whether that's like you being a man, like all the hats you wear, like entrepreneur, husband, or like partner or father, or in your personal growth, and all those things, having a vision in each of those things, or if you don't have time, quote unquote time, then just an overall vision of what you want to create in your life. Because how can you co-create something with reality, with the universe, with God, with source, if you don't have an idea of what you want? And like, that's like basically setting the GPS for the end coordinate. And that becomes your North Star of the things that I want in my life, the things that I don't want in my life. And everything that comes to you now goes through that filter of, is this contributing to my vision? And not only that, but you can share that with people. You can share that with people you work with, business partners, or your daughter, or if you have a partner, your partner. and just like, can we co-create on this? Like, this is the vision that I have. Like, I tell my parents, like, this is the vision that I have for us. And like, they're happy to hear that, like, I actually care enough about them that I think about this relationship in a way that I would love for us to have a relationship that we can go back and forth, that we trust each other. And then if we fall out of that, where like they share things with like other family members or something like that, that was supposed to be within our relationship. I'm like, like, whoa, like our relationship is like based on trust. Like, this is the vision. We talked about this. Like, how do you feel that like that you stepped outside of this? So it's something that we can hold each other to, and it's super powerful. And I think that helps with, boiling it down to like goals. The goals are part of this vision. And also, like, when we procrastinate, we have to look at, is there a part of our vision that we don't really believe is achievable? And I think that's where my work comes in. Is just like really identifying like limiting beliefs and like continuing thoughts or negative emotions, or what I would just call baggage in general, that keep us from creating the reality that we want. And one of the things that I think about often is like suffering is optional, right? And so suffering is just pain times resistance. Like, pain is guaranteed. Like, that's just it. Like, you have a nervous system that's going to be positive and painful experiences. That's just how we exist. It doesn't have to be suffering, though. Suffering is the resistance to that. And so when you have that resistance, you're making things harder on yourself. So however you associate with your goals or the things that you quote unquote have to do or you should do in life, those create resistance, and that creates burnout. That creates procrastination. So really, like, starting to like just develop the sense of what you're resistant to, and if that's something that's serving you, because resistance is not necessarily a good or bad thing either, but just becoming aware that it's there. And if that's getting in your way, then, figuring out what that is, or contacting somebody who can help you and hold you accountable, or, I do like energy work, or I do like subconscious release techniques and things like that. So it's like maybe somebody else has like the tools or the support system that allows you, or the methodologies that allow you to like clear out the stuff that's not serving you, or they have the level of discernment where they can look at you and they can hear you and they can hear the projections coming out, and they could just identify that. Just open that up, and even a conversation sometimes can clear it up. But if not, then there's always other things that you can do too. So I mean, it's just like really just figuring out what the biggest, most exciting thing that's going to pull you forward into the future that you want, and then allowing that process to take place, allowing the synchronicities to happen. It's not all like yang. It's not all like, I gotta fucking wake up with like, I don't know if I'm allowed to curse. I just gotta wake up with like saliva coming out of my mouth like a ravenous dog and like just go after my day. Like, it's not really like that, man. Like, that's burnout. That's like coming from like place of like fear that you won't make it if you don't do that. And it's like the universe, I believe, this personal belief is, I believe that it conspires for us. I believe that it serves us, like you say. And the higher that we can connect with it on the vibratory plane, the more it's there to serve us, because that's what that's I think that is the law, part of one of the laws of the universe. And so I believe that that's why we exist, is so that we can realize that we are connected to source in the most divine way possible. And all the things that separate us are just things that we get a chance to work through. I think those are, I call them like golden nuggets, like the things that have been passed down from my parents that don't serve me, and I get to transmute and bring that back to them, and they get to receive the joy out of that. And I receive the joy from like connecting with my parents, the people who brought me into this plane of existence. And if you look at the Eastern philosophies, the main essence of most Eastern philosophy is this idea of tantra, and it's not like just a sexual idea of tantra that we have in the West, our projection into it, but it's union with the highest, and that's what yoga is as well. And yoga, in the East, is not like just doing these poses and headstands and stuff like that. It's like spirit, mind, body, all in unison in connection with divinity, and like when you channel that you're basically channeling that, you're learning how to channel that. And that's just, that is just the most powerful experience that I've ever had. Is just like just connecting with that divine source and just being with it, with the flow and the speed of life. So yeah.
Yeah. You know, I follow the scriptures, and I follow the teachings of what people know as Christ, but he's had many names before. Is one of the Hebrew name is Yahweh, Yahweh, or um just that oneness, that understanding of the beginning of all that is and ever will be, and the creator of the universe, of that which works through us. And one thing that I've come to understand more and more is that when we are operating in our own understandings of our lives, where a lot of times we're operating in the ego, and it can be very misleading. But when we start to go to that source that you speak of and allow the source to be the guiding force, where you realize that you were created in the image of something far greater that you can only begin to understand. And
Mhm.
when you start to begin to understand that and let that understanding and that source, that power, that thing that always is and ever will be, that infinite source of of um positive stream of energy that is unstoppable,
Mhm.
you really start to grow, because then you allow that to dictate your thoughts, because that's where
Mhm.
the thoughts really come from. It's not coming from you.
Mhm.
You're the vessel that source is working through. And
Mhm.
that's where you have the major breakthrough, because then you start to be like, I don't have to be in control of shit. I don't have to be in control of anything. All I have to do is be one with the force and the source of power that is in control, that created me to be in the first place, because
Mhm.
I'm only here for a temporary experience. So
Yeah.
let me make the most of it with that higher power, instead of my interpretation of what that power should look like and be
Mhm.
like.
Mhm.
And that's the true freedom. So going into that, let's segue into a question that you have here. What does discipline and willpower mean to you?
Yeah, I think that means, I mean, discipline. Like, if you look at the word discipline, there's a couple of definitions. One of them is like to be reprimanded, right? You can look at that in a more colloquial old term as like getting spanked. But that's kind of what we do to ourselves sometimes too. Like that's our relationship with discipline is like, oh, I ate this donut, I'm going to shame myself for a little bit, or I didn't work out, I'm going to shame myself. But I think what that does is like that actually ends up making things harder on you, because now you got to overcome the shame. Now you got to like, now instead of like being at zero, you're at -1. That you feel like you got to make up for something. There's no making up. Like you said it earlier, there's no past. Like there's only now. So like as soon as you can get back to now and like out of the shame and out of the things that you feel like you should do to you gotta do to yourself, like you can just be like, okay, well, I'm just gonna work out right now for like 20 minutes. I'm gonna just do 10 push-ups. I'll work out whatever, not tomorrow, hopefully. But um so yeah, I think like the relationship with discipline that we have is like maybe it comes from some generational stuff that hasn't necessarily served those people who have passed it down to us either. And so we're dealing with that. But once we deal with it, it doesn't, the buck stops there. And the people that we come in contact with, you and I in this conversation, or the people that we raise, or the people that we coach, or the people that we spend time with, it also elucidates that idea and brings it to light to where it can be released. And you don't, like I don't have to do that to anybody that I raise, or you don't have to do that to anybody you raise, because we just have this like different understanding that probably not the way. Like we're just inserting unnecessary negativity that's going to get locked into the subconscious mind, and then it's going to bring up these like open loops of all these things that like tell us that we're not good enough, basically. And that's kind of where I feel like a lot of discipline in our culture comes from.
Absolutely. And when it comes to like the martial arts, let's
Mm.
talk about the martial arts, because that's done a lot for you.
Yeah, yeah.
When it comes to martial arts, what are some of the things that you really enjoy about it? Also, how do you tie martial arts into spirituality? And you could take as long as you want to answer this, because it's something where a lot of times people that are spiritual,
Mhm.
they don't tie in the physical. They don't they'll tie in the mind and the soul, but they don't tie in the body into that 360-degree level of spiritual understanding. And it's something that I want to be an example of for the people that I deal with more and more, because I think it's very important, especially where we live in Western civilization. And Western civilization, the problem is they don't want you to be healthy physically. They want you to stay sick. They give you these band-aids, and then they give you something called pharmaceuticals, which is a form of witchcraft, and
Mm,
it's meant to keep you spiritually um under a spell. It's meant to keep you spiritually imprisoned,
mm,
and it slowly kills you and makes you go crazy and lose your mind, lose the faculties of your brain, and eventually deteriorate the body to where you turn into shit. You wind up to deteriorate to the point where a lot of times you can't walk anymore. You get diabetes. You start having heart problems. You start having problems with the central nervous system, with your brain, with your feet, with your extremities, with your liver. I mean, the list goes on and on. So, what does, because you, from what I've seen on your Instagrams, you pretty healthy guy. Um, you look like you could whip some major ass. You're very agile, flexible. You have a lot of like you have like a lot of acrobatic techniques that I've seen in the videos
yeah,
where you
yeah.
do kicks and stuff like that. So I'm assuming it's very inspiring to those that actually want to get to that level. But what does it mean to you? What does the martial arts and spirituality mean to you, and how does it work out for you?
Yeah, so with martial arts, I believe like for me, it's been like the chain that connects like the spiritual to the mental to the physical. Because like one of the laws of the universe, the natural laws of the universe is mentalism, which is like everything starts in the mental plane. And so if like say like a flip, like if I can imagine myself doing it, it's pretty cool to like actually learn how to do it and then be able to do it and like then have that relationship where anything that I imagine I can do. And that's like what a lot of people when they enter into like physical fitness in general, like they look a certain way and then like, oh, I wish I looked like I had a six pack. I don't really think like that's a great look, but I mean, yeah, it's
That's
just
not a
I
good
think
intention to have, right? Because then it goes
yeah,
back to ego.
yeah. There you got it right there, man. You and me, man. Yeah. So I think for a lot of people, the physical aspect is the beginning of a journey of the relationship of manifestation or materialization of our inner world into the outer world. And I think that the outer world is really just a reflection of our inner world. So the more things we clean up, the shadows, the projections that we clean up from within, the less of the stuff, the problems that we're going to see outside. And so martial arts, I know I've been in it since I was 7. It's been like 28 years since I, started. I'm still doing it. I've, done so much like on the Eastern side, like judo, um, Muay Kwan. I've done like different styles of kung fu, karate. Then I did like Brazilian jiu jitsu. I did some Muay Thai. I did boxing. Like I went to the West, like I wanted to understand it from like a global perspective. Then I went to the Filipino styles of martial arts, learning from like the most elite, like knife fighting, um, training school called the Sayak Kali School, and then I learned gunfighting, like hand to hand stuff, and then like hand to gun stuff, and then like rifles, and learn how to like do tricking, like flipping, and all that kind of stuff too. So like I just feel like because going from the Scarface thing, now going to the John Wick thing, like I feel like I'm a different version of John Wick, like more agile, like, whatever. But yeah, like I think that like we all there's a movie that plays in all of our heads about who we are, and we get to live that out. And it's going to be a great movie with a great ending, or it's going to end like Scarface. or something like that, right? And so like Scarface is the epitome of ego, and what that gets you, right, is like it
Right.
gets you loneliness, and it doesn't really get you real friends, you know. So
Yeah.
I
That's
mean,
what
martial arts.
narcissism does.
Yeah. And man, you're talking about like self. Earlier, you mentioned what is that, self worship, right? And that's
Yeah.
narcissism, man. That's what social media is kind of like bringing that aspect out. But yeah, I think like martial arts have really just, for me, been the relationship of materializing the internal world outside, and then seeing my relationship and what I can do. Um, and then what's fun for me on the spiritual side is like, I remember one of my first serious teachers that I took. It's gonna sound weird, but like he had a lot of spiritual. He was my Buddhist teacher, but he was also like a martial arts master. He never taught me martial arts, so he just only taught me, Buddhist teachings. But he he can do a lot of things. I mean, like he's personal experience. Like I had a friend who had a concussion snowboarding, and like she had a lot of difficulty recalling things, and she had a concussion. Yeah, so it was pretty bad. And I took her to him, and he basically did like energy healing, and he's known in the Buddhist community to like have healed people, like from very life threatening diseases, cancer, and whatever. And one of my first experiences meeting him, I was introduced to my friend, and he was like, "Yeah, he's a martial arts master, this and that." And I was just like, I was still very ego. I was like 25 or something when I met him. And I was like, "Is he willing to sign a death certificate?" Like in those Chinese movies where like they challenge each other. And then I was just messing around, but I was kind of being a dick. And then he was like, "No, you should really meet him," and stuff like that. And I saw like my friend, he was like always depressed, like when we were growing up, and he was really dark, but he was like really, really, really smart, like wicked smart. And he invited me out. So it's like, all right, like I see like you've changed, like there's something different about you. So yeah, let me go see what this is about. And I came late, which is typical of me at that time. I came late, like into the room, and he looks up at me, and then he continues speaking, and he's like, "So why is it that whenever martial artists meet each other, they always want to fight to see who's better?" And I was like, "Damn, what?" And he's like, one of the true values of martial arts is working on something and being able to share that with somebody else, because at the root of martial arts is learning how to protect yourself, and there's nothing more primal that drives like a sense of security on this planet than like being able to feel secure physically. um and he beat me like just in one sentence. Like I didn't with no strikes were made, nothing, no, it was just over in that instant. And I was like, yeah, I surrender to your wisdom. um
Mm. He did a Bruce Lee on you. He did the art of
yo
fighting without fighting.
yes, he got me good. So yeah, I mean, I think it is in a different sense. It is discipline in the other definition of just doing something to mold you to become who you wish to be. And in martial arts, there's all these philosophies that come with it, like the Bruce Lee. He's written so many, different philosophies of his personal philosophies, and I have my personal philosophies, and like all those for me boil down into first principles that it goes into the martial arts that I train and teach, and it becomes an esoteric practice of, for me, like, because the inner world is a reflection of the outer world, like how do we get a better sense of all these inner world things that we can't see but we have a relationship with, like these feelings, these like burning desires, these like, it could be, yeah, it could be like how fast you move through something or how slow you move through something. And we in the physical world we can see that, but the internal world, like you can't really see like how fast your thoughts are moving, for instance. But like if you just like put a layer over this whole other realm of expression that comes from just adding these little things, these little elements of anchors, of frames to operate from. So yeah, it's been a huge thing for me.
Yeah, I think I'm going to call this episode Energy Flows and Transforms. I would say it never dies, but it'd be too long for the title. But I think I'm going to call this Energy Flows and Transforms.
Yeah. I think that's a perfect, because we talked about transmutation and a lot of,
You know, one of my favorite quotes from Bob Proctor, he passed away about 1.5 years ago, I think. He said, well, if you could see it in your mind, you can hold it in your hand. And when you were talking, I was thinking about that. Let's take this conversation into a whole different direction.
Okay.
I believe in the book of Revelations about how we are coming into a time, or we're living in an age that is spiritually corrupted, where a lot of wickedness has been glorified. There's a scripture in the Bible from Isaiah, the prophet, that says they've accepted the darkness for the light. It's Isaiah 5:20. It says they accepted the darkness for the light and the light for darkness. They've accepted good for evil and evil for good, and they accepted the bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. I'm seeing that, and when I interpreted that on just on a basic layman's terms for somebody who may not be spiritually inclined or even in the scriptures, is that society as a whole, humanity as a whole, has accepted the lie as the truth, and the truth is now the lie. And the more we are coming into this idolatry, this self-worship through social media, the narcissism that's rising amongst people, where people have very little empathy, because that's what narcissists lack, is empathy. They have no compassion. They don't have self-love. If anything, they have an insecurity of they don't love themselves, and they want everybody to feel that lack of love that they have themselves. Just like what I heard in the Joe Rogan podcast years ago when he first started, his friend Rembed said, he said, you know what a hater is? A hater is unrealized potential. And he said Michael Jordan can't ever be a hater, because when Michael Jordan sees somebody doing something great, he gets inspired. And a hater, and you see it all the time, where it's like they can't see that which you are doing within themselves, because they don't realize that potential in themselves. So it's easier for them to go to the lower end of the spectrum and be like, it's easier for me to go on a lower vibration and hate on that than to go on the higher vibration and actually congratulate the person for that inspiration and want to aspire to being something great themselves, but they can't see themselves that way. That is the society that we live in right now on steroids. So the question that I have for you is, where do you think we're headed as a species, as humans, as spiritual beings having a physical experience, with everything that's going on? Because there's so much chaos with governments. The new world order is very much alive. The one world order system is taking its course, you know, with this whole depopulation agenda, this agenda for control, transhumanism, polluting the air, the Hunger Games, bringing that to life, just keeping us at a low state. What is your perceptions of everything that's going on, and where do you think we're headed as a species?
Yeah, I love that question. I've read the book Sapiens, which kind of gives an overview of human history from, the origins of evolution, if you believe that. And I've looked at one of the books that I often reference as well is the Hunter-Gatherer's Guide to the 21st Century, which talks about a shorter period of human, evolution, the timeline, at least in terms of just being a hunter-gatherer society to where we are now. It's actually not that long from being hunter-gatherer to now. Depending on where you're at in the world, it could be like 2,000 years. Some places it's still going on. But like, that's not really a lot of time for us to physiologically change, like our mechanisms for reward and for discernment and things like that are hardwired into us. And so we're one of the things that's happening is like the reality that we're born into is not the same that we become an adult in, you know? So like me growing up didn't have social media, and, you know, some other people growing up before me, no internet. And like now, like it's TikTok for people who are growing up in Gen Z, and we don't know what's going to happen like the next 5 years. It could be like, you know, AI chip implants, or, you know, who knows. But the point that I'm making is that like we don't have like the contextual knowledge from being raised to have a level of discernment to know what's happening now in our adult lives, because we were raised without these things and they're just happening so fast.
Right.
And you know, I spent a lot of time digging into quote unquote, you know, conspiracy theories. So many, like endless. But it, you know, ultimately it made me feel powerless, because I just felt like, man, like, you know, the food's being poisoned, and, you know, the skies are being polluted, and we're breathing in, you know, barium and aluminum, and like there's all these like there's, you know, like nuclear waste in our ocean, islands of plastic, like the government's lying to us, money's fake, you know, all this stuff. And
Yeah.
it was overwhelming, and I got depressed. And every time I go deep, like down the rabbit hole of like, oh, there's a new conspiracy theory, and it's like linked to all these other ones, and it cites all these other ones, and I look through all these other ones, and I get depressed, and it makes me feel powerless. And so I think for me, it's always been like bringing back that locus of control into like, what can I do? And I mean, I can't do, I would say like I can't change the world tomorrow, but I think there's I'm not prepared to say a Tupac quote, but it's like, he's basically going to be like, he might die trying, but he's going to be the reason why it's like that fight to do more is still around. He's going to inspire people. And like, that's all I can hope to do, is like through the decisions that I make, through the life that I live, people recognize that on their own. Real recognizes real. And I think that's an unstated law of the universe. And I have people come up to me all the time, you know, and like just give me mad respect. I can be at an event, and like the event coordinator wants to connect with me, you know, like, and so it just happens like that. And like, I just always want to like collaborate with people. I always want to give and do more. And so like, I think just being in the spirit of that, looking for people who are in the spirit and believe in the spirit of reciprocity, of giving back, and being able to sense and detect and receive kindness, and then turn that back, like, you know, tenfold or twofold even, instead of going into those relationships, like you say, where like people, they just want to take, you know, and they just want to exploit. And so just being able to have that sensitivity to know where to give like all the value that you have, so that it can go into the world, like, and then be multiplied. And it's a multiplication game. Everything comes down to like a multiplication game. The universe is not linear, it's exponential. So how do you multiply and multiply, and allow like the fruits of your discernment, the fruits of your virtues come to light, and be received by the world. And I think that's like the biggest thing that I try to focus on within my realm of control. And I try to bring that to my family. I try to bring that to people who are close to me, and everybody responds in kind. And for the people who don't, I just spend less time with them, because there's not an equal exchange.
Wow, it's amazing. You answered that question great, you know. And if you ever get a chance, I just did my 500 episode on Saturday, and I have actually
Congrats.
548 in total, but those are bonus episodes in total, like the extra 48 episodes. But I talk a lot about conspiracy theories, but I also started a series called "Conspiracy Is Not a Theory," because when the pandemic hit, or the plandemic, I basically was just like, all these people that were considered conspiracy theorists throughout the ages are not conspiracy theorists. They're people that were just bringing out truth, and the truth is absolute, especially when it comes to the truth of the Most High. And you said something where it's like, when you go deep into the rabbit hole, especially in the beginning, it can drive you somewhat crazy because I went through that process
Yeah.
in my early 30s where I was
Yeah.
going insane because I was going so deep down the rabbit hole.
It makes you schizophrenic because you're like doubting reality and like what's
Right.
real, what's not, and like it gets pretty intense. Yeah.
What was my saving grace, though, in all of it is this scripture I'm going to read to you right now. It's from Isaiah. It's 54:17. It says, "No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, and every tongue that shall rise against thee in judgment thou shalt condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their righteousness is of me, saith the Lord." And the reason I read that is because what I came to the understanding was like, I'm not even though I'm going down this rabbit hole, and now that I don't have to really go down it. I can seek certain information as a truth seeker and understand the legacy of lies because that's
Mm.
what I do on this show is that I expose the lies. Even though that this because we still understand what righteous because I'm gonna again and um start to buffer apparently some technical difficulty today. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put on my conditioner because sometimes when it gets too hot in the studio, things start to malfunction as well. All right, so let's play this again. First, we have to understand that we're being lied to even understand what the truth is, because a lot of times we accept the lie as the truth because we don't know no better, and we
Yeah.
don't even know that the truth actually exists because we think that the lie is the truth. And what my spirituality and my faith and understanding of this truth of that which is and always will be, which is the most high, is that there's nothing to fear when you're operating in that righteousness, because no matter how dark it may get, you are still going to be a beacon of light within
Mm.
any darkness. That's why at every show, if you look at I'm going to show you the artwork here that I created. And this is what I usually put in the beginning. But this is my artwork from my podcast, right? So
Mm.
this is a tunnel. The
I love
light
it.
is within the person, the human
Mhm.
being having the spiritual being having the physical experience.
Mhm.
And what I say at the end of the show is don't look for the light at the end of the tunnel because the light is within you.
Mhm.
So light up the tunnel and find your way through the darkness.
Mhm.
And what you said is exactly that, because as dark as it is, and this is why I asked you this question, because things are looking real grim this day. The food,
Yeah, yeah,
everything is
yeah.
just fucked up. It's
Even the
just
credit store for thing is crazy.
it is.
I'm in
It's
I'm in
just like
denial right now. That's crazy.
everything is fucked up. I mean, literally, it's just everything. It's nothing of this world is good for you.
Mm.
But this is the beauty of what you were talking about, that source. When you are operating in that positive stream, you influence the world in a way where it's like it was like that movie um with Nicolas Cage from the comic book Ghost Rider, and there was that one character that wherever he went everything just died. The plants, everything would just shrivel up
Mm.
and turn dark. And that's how a lot of people are walking around with that
That
type
was
of
me when I
energy.
was depressed. I was literally morose. I was radioactive, man. That was me.
Radioact there you go, great. My sister's like that. My
Yeah.
sister's like a dark cloud wherever she goes. She just brings this energy that's just like, ugh,
Mm.
I don't deal with her no more. I haven't spoken
Mm.
to my sister in over a year or two. Um, and I'm okay with that. I've
Yeah.
eliminated a lot of people out of my life that are very narcissistic and very dark and don't want to be held accountable for their actions. and the type of people where you have to walk on eggshells. I don't walk on eggshells. You know what I mean? I'd rather just not walk around you. And when you're walking in that positive light, in that righteousness, and it's not that self-righteousness nature, it's that righteousness of being a person that is operating in a manner that's respectable spiritually, where you have compassion, you have discernment, you have love in your heart. You're not so judgmental, but more understanding, and you come from a place of empathy where not only can you see yourself in somebody else's shoes, but you're willing to help somebody become better, especially when they're down, and
Mhm.
not kick them while they're down, but lift them up and help them lift themselves up so that they can teach somebody else the same thing. And I think that when you operate like that, the way I see the world now is that as fucked up as it is, I'm not going to be fucked up. I'm going to be an example of that spiritual light so that wherever I go, if somebody is shriveling up a plant or a rose, when they walk by, when I walk right behind them, that rose or that plant is going to get life again.
Mm.
It's going to be vibrant again because of the energy that is emanating through me. So I'm becoming fluid with the universe and allowing that infinite positive stream to flow through me as the vessel that I was meant to be in the first place, because that's all I am. I'm just the experience
Uh,
from,
Amen.
from the person that is or from the entity that is allowing me to have this experience and be expressed through that heavenly light, so to speak. So I'm glad that you see it that way. Continue seeing it that way, because that's the only way to survive and thrive in the world today. Any other way is going to bring you back to depression. It's going to make you pessimistic. That's why I do this. It's all about awareness.
Mhm.
If you're not aware of your reality, then you're pretty much shit out of luck, right? I mean,
I
you're
think
just
that's the
going to
thing about
be
judgment and discernment too. Is like judgment, I reserve. That's for God. Like
right.
I'm not here to judge anybody, but I can and
Exactly.
should and need to discern what is right for me. But I
Right.
don't, I'm not here to judge nobody. That's just not my job.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, I know that you only allotted about an hour and a half, so I think we have about 15 minutes left, so to speak.
Sure.
Yeah. So let's take these 15 minutes to talk about what it is that if you want to let the listeners know what your purpose is, some of the work that you do, and let them know what it's all about. Because I am gonna, in the description page, I am gonna put your information. I'm gonna have your Instagram page, your website, your Facebook, Twitter links on here, as well as the yeah, that's pretty much it from what I see here. I'm going to put all your links here for people to connect with you if they choose to. But what are some of the things that you want to bring out in this podcast that we haven't discussed yet that you want to, let the listeners know about?
Yeah. Thanks for giving me a chance to do that. I think um, I'll start at the top. I think like my purpose and what I'm doing with my business, my vision is to to heal people from the baggage, from the limitations, from all these things that we're talking about that were passed into us that create cycles of self sabotage, create cycles of suffering. While I'm doing that within myself, I'm not perfect. I don't
Right.
claim to be perfect. But as I'm doing this in myself, I can open up the door that I can do that for other people. And that's what I'm doing through my business. I've been a serial entrepreneur. I've built, sold, scaled multiple businesses in the past, all products businesses, all is just like widgets making money. But now I'm like, that's not what serves humanity. That's not the greatest thing that I'm here to do. And that has to do with connecting with people, using that side that I've been repressing since I was, a, you know, basically a boy thinking that I was a man and trying to be
Mhm.
stoic. And so accepting that gift within myself, I see that there's so much that I can do, I can give to people. And part of that is like I have this business savvy. So like I want to create a business that makes sense in the financial sense so that I can scale that, so that I can have a global effect. And I know I can't do it by myself. So I want to license this, this business, this practice, these methodologies, like how we run our ads, just like all this process to make it really easy and turnkey for anybody who wants to be a part of like the organization. And so they can basically, it can make financial sense for them to continue in this path that I believe in. And so like from the top down, that's what I want to do. And I've offered you, like, I think even just an hour, basically I would just send you like a pre-worksheet, right? And it's what I send all my VIP clients. It's like, if you have like a VIP day, it's like a 2-day, 3 hours each day session. But I'll just have you do this pre-worksheet, and it just kind of outlines like your vision and like all these important aspects of what you want to bring into this world. And then what that elicits is your limiting beliefs. And then so you and I'll send you a schedule or whatever. If you're interested, for like an hour, you can schedule something, and we'll just like clear out like all the baggage, like, any self-worth stuff, any limiting beliefs, any doubts, anything that was implanted in there. And you can see the power for yourself. But it's I do it with people all the time, and the change is night and day. It's like we identify with our beliefs, and as soon as we remove those beliefs, we have a new identity. And it's not like completely different. It's just minus those things that we believe that we were, those things that we believe that we could not be, those things that we believe that we were not. And some of that stuff is our inner greatness that we doubt. And so that's something that that just brings so much joy to me and excites me to like just wake up that level of passion, that level of greatness that like exists within everybody, and like, our potential. And that's, the name of my business, High Performance Humans, is like, I believe that like we can operate at a level of performance that we have not seen, we have not explored, we have not discovered. And part of what I want to do is be able to open that up for people, open up that door of potential, of capacity, and allow it to just like connect to the world and just unleash that, in whatever ways possible. And that's the thing that if I could just have one desire in my life, and I could just, transfer all of my vitality, all of my life force into, I want that to be the thing that I leave on this planet, and the effect that I have. So yeah, that's why I breathe. That's every time I eat. That's what I give pray for, what I give gratitude for. So yeah, I'm all consumed by this vision.
Okay, interesting. And let me see if I could pull up your website here.
Yeah. So the website's been having some issues, but it should be working.
Yeah, it is having issues
right now.
As soon as
Yeah.
you said that, it says your connection is not private. Attackers might try to steal your information from
I think
timandbowie.com.
I think I have to give you the HTTPS // version with the www
Okay.
as part of the link, and then that would work. But the website's cool because it gives you there's like quizzes on there, and it's just like in every area of your life, whether that's parenting, relationships, money. It gives you a quiz so that you can figure out the most important things for yourself as far as like what your values are. And then what I always tell people is, based on your values, because we in our mind we have a rank ordered set of values or priorities that we give, and some things we're not aware of and some things we are. So this quiz helps to bring to light what the values are. And I always tell people, like, give me a set of values, your set of values and your limiting beliefs in a time horizon, and I could probably give a pretty good guess of what's going to happen in your life, what's going to unfold, because it's that much of a determining factor in our lives. Our values is how we filter meaning and purpose and fulfillment in reality. And so if we're clear on what those things are, then we can live a purposeful, fulfilled life with meaning without trying to do that, because it's just a natural process of taking in an experience through your value system and living it.
Okay, great. And last but not least, real quick before you go, something I didn't get to ask you, but what is biohacking?
Biohacking simply is knowing that your body has a physiological response to an input and then figuring out what it is that you want to have as the output of that. So I'll give you an example. It's like there's a study like 20 years ago where they said if you want to prepare for a marathon, guess what? Running, as long as you can at a steady state is not the way to do it. And that's the way people been doing it for decades and still do it. They said, well, all you need to do is actually, according to this study, was just sprint for 30 seconds for 5 to 6 sets, 3 days a week. And people who did that did better in marathons. And so like the actual exercise time was like 2 minutes a day. I mean, you're taking rest between, like 2 minutes rest between. So the whole thing ends up being like, 20 minutes or whatever. But going all out, it actually increased like the VO2 factor, which is like how well your body uses oxygen, better than steady state running, which is just like running at like 3 miles an hour for 5 miles or 10 miles or whatever. Actually, your body gets tired and the cortisone goes up. So anyways, I'm not going to get into that, but it's just the idea is that like there are ways to get the results that you want in life, like within your physical body, whether that's like sleep better, whether that's be more awake, whether that's have more energy, whether that's get jacked with naturally, you just biohack. And the idea is just understanding how your physiology works and what to do to modify your outputs with the least amount of using the 80-20 principle, using the least amount of effort. So, just doing 2 minutes of exercise a day versus running like 10 miles, you know what I mean? Like it's just
So that
different.
less is more. Less
Yes.
is more.
Yes.
That's something that I came to an understanding 5 years ago, and I've been trying to practice with everything I do, especially in business. Less is more. It's like you don't have to do so much to get the results you want. It's actually doing less that gets you more
Yes.
results. Yeah. I'm gonna actually try that because I was getting back into running,
Uh-huh.
and I think I'm gonna do some sprinting instead of
Ooh.
just doing long-term running.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
'Cause I
recommend
used to
bike
be a
sprints
track.
first, just because it's less taxing on your body. But if you're like you're already
Oh,
a really good runner,
you talking about biking? Like bike sprints?
like on an air bike where you gotta do the arm
Oh,
thing and the leg thing,
okay.
that's like safer. But like sprinting is how they did the study. You still get results from the bike thing, but with the actual sprinting, you're working out your entire body. The only thing with that is like if your body's not used to that level of stress because it's like maximal stress, you could get injured. So that's the only caveat. So just
Yeah.
safety versus, but the results are pretty similar.
Okay. Well, Tim, I want to thank you for coming on to the Network of Awareness. I think that you provided a lot of great substance, and the information that you provided, I know, is going to be very edifying for all of the listeners around the world. And definitely want you to I'm going to have you come back if you're more than welcome to on season 6. When we start season 6, I'll have you come back on and we can talk more about biohacking, talk more in depth about discernment and some of the work that you're doing. So greatly appreciate you coming on. And any last comment you want to make before we end the broadcast?
I'm just really feeling blessed to be a guest on your podcast, and I really thank you for the insights you shared through Isaiah and the Book of Revelations. Just sharing I feel like we're very connected. Like the way that we see the world, the way that we grew up. So I just really appreciate this time that we spent together. Thank you, Laura.
Me too. Me too.
Really
Really
mean that.
appreciate your time and your energy and your spirit. So, with that being said, brothers and sisters, I'm gonna give an outro, and um, we'll get that started right now. All right, so that was the interview with Tim Bowie, and it's crazy because that title about how energy transforms and was a great title, but I think the way we ended the broadcast when it comes to biohacking was very fitting to call this benevolent biohacking. because I think a lot of what Tim and I were talking about is that biohacking. For those that don't know, I'm going to give you the definition according to what it states here in what I looked up in Google. And it says, what is biohacking? Biohacking can be described as citizen or do it yourself biology. For main biohackers, this consists of making small incremental diet or lifestyle changes to make small improvements in your health and well-being. Biohacks promise anything from quick weight loss to enhanced brain function. And like he was talking about with sprinting for long distance runners and it being more beneficial and having more success doing that method opposed to the one that's been used for decades. What is biohacking the body? Biohacking your body means changing your chemistry and your physiology through science and self experimentation to increase energy and vitality. It is a broad definition, but that's also because the concept is constantly evolving. Wow, giving all praises to the Most High for that, because that's what we should be doing spiritually, mentally, and physically all the time. Especially in the world today, we should be constantly evolving in our understanding in this walk in this thing called life, and really be getting a greater understanding of what our purpose is here individually to be of service to the great creator of that which is and always will be, and also to the creations being us to each other. And that goes back to what the scriptures talks about and showing love to one another. And something else that I like that Tim brought out was that, when he shares this information or when he's trying to help his family or friends or people that he comes across in his walk, those that are not very well receiving to the information, you tend to stay away from. And that I truly believe in that, because there's people that I deal with or have dealt with that I don't deal with anymore, because it's pointless to deal with people that are not looking to grow, that are not going to take counsel properly, that are not going to pursue things with a pure heart, that just want to waste time. And a lot of times, if we focus our energy too much on these types of people, we wind up wasting that energy to these people. And it serves no purpose in our lives to waste that energy when we can be giving it to somebody that's going to receive it and going to do something with it, especially in every waking present moment. And I can't stress that enough, because there are people in this world that are not worth your time. I want to say that again. There are people in this world that are not worth your time. And if you're somebody giving time to somebody who doesn't appreciate it, you're wasting it. And you're wasting valuable time that's always present. So in that present moment, that energy you gave was a waste. And some people may disagree with that, and that's fine. We can agree to disagree. But I know from personal experience that that is the case. That's why I only like to deal with people that want to evolve and grow and be better versions of themselves than they were yesterday, because that is the true experience of life. It's not to constantly being trying to destroy. That's from that malevolent energy. That's the energy that you can't grow from. That's the energy that slowly but surely leads you to a path of destruction, and then ultimately self-destruction, because we ultimately self-destruct. The powers that shouldn't be know this. That's why they're constantly keeping us distracted from the Most High, so that we don't constantly bring out this benevolent biohacking in increments to improve whatever it is that we're involved in and doing and gaining in knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. So, with that being said, brothers and sisters, I'm going to be doing a live broadcast on the Council on Christ Relations in a half an hour. So at 2:30, a brother by the name of Kazakia and myself are going to be doing an episode in class on the Council on Christ Relations, as well as the BOCC.com via YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. So if you want to take a look at that episode live, we're going to be on there at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And The episode in class is going to be all about holding ourselves responsible to the word of the Most High, holding ourselves and accountable to those scriptures to live them instead of just reading them and letting those words fall to the wayside, but instead taking the word of the Most High and bringing it into fruition, manifesting that which is in our walk on a daily basis. And it's not easy, but it's worth doing. So if that's something you want to check out, we're gonna be doing that in a half an hour. And of course, download the show. Download the show from your local podcast players, whether it be Apple, Spotify. Uh, of course, we're on YouTube and stuff, but you know me, like even though I'm here on YouTube and a lot of people like to go on YouTube to watch podcasts, download it audio. It's much better for the network, because for me, and this is just my personal opinion, I don't like giving too much of my skills and gifts over to these platforms like YouTube and Facebook or Twitter, because they're not really supportive of this type of information. And because of that, I think we should give it to the more exclusive podcast platforms that do. And then ultimately, when I come out with the TV channel, I think the TV channel is going to be the epitome of support when it comes to having a true network of awareness that solely is not interrupted by these virtual governments. And that's why the TV channel is solely going to be subscription based, because then that way you're going to be paying $4.99 per month to get uninterrupted, no have to worry about algorithms and all this other madness that goes on with these networks. But I do what I do to get the word out. These platforms are a stepping stone. They're more of a marketing type of platform, but support the podcast through downloading it through your favorite podcast player. Download it from YouTube if that's the only option you have. And we steadily are growing. And at the end of the day, we do this to serve a greater purpose for everyone to benefit from, instead of just trying to get vainglory and validation from the world. I'd rather be recognized by the world for the information instead of being recognized by the world to venerate me as a man. I don't need that veneration, because I'm in complete, total service to that which is and always will be. And I'm just here barring a glimpse of what this potential of this infinite light and divine love comes from, which is the Most High. So with that being said, brothers and sisters, I hope that you have a safe weekend. I know that this is I don't celebrate these holidays, they're man-made holidays at all. So sometimes I forget about them. But apparently it's Memorial Day weekend. So I hope that you have a very, a safe Memorial Day weekend, whether you're going barbecuing or whatever it is you decide to do. And that, when you live in the present, there's always an opportunity for a new beginning. And don't look for the light at the end of the tunnel, brothers and sisters, because the light is and always will be within you. So light up that tunnel and find your way through the darkness. This is all the information saying peace, love, and light, and giving all praises to that which is and always will be the Most High, our great creator. All right. Peace and blessings, brothers and sisters.